What's up, LTD addicts? Let's talk about podcasting. Everybody knows that podcasting is huge and your business could use one for marketing, getting more sales, all of that important stuff. But setting up your own podcast is kind of tedious. Now, podcasting is not new, despite what the media might be telling you. It's been around since 2004, yet it is still complex to get going. So I'm really excited about today's LTD. It's for a lifetime deal on a podcasting hosting company that also helps you get on places like Apple or Google or Spotify with a single click. All right, so we're going to get into that in a second. But first, I want to tell you about a brand new listing that we have over at That LTD Life for all of your Black Friday and Cyber Monday needs. We have worked our tail off to gather over 100 different deals that are coming up this week. Some of them have already begun running. So if you are excited for Black Friday like I am, head on over to thatltd.life and you can sort through. We've got great filtering options built in so that you can find the exact deals that are interesting to you. All right, so enough of that. Let's get over to the AppSumo deal page for podcast.co. Here is the page. You can see that codes are a little bit on the pricey side. They're $79. We can go down to the plans here. You can see we're going to get lifetime deal here, lifetime hosting. So anytime you have lifetime hosting, put the red flag up because hosting involves costs. So, you only pay once, but you're still going to be incurring them a monthly fee. So looks like one code is going to get you a single show and 5 collaborators per code. Now, as you scale that up, you'll get 2 additional shows per code. The maximum stack here is 3 total, and you'll get 5 collaborators per show. So a total of, if you have 3 shows in the second code, you'll get 15 collaborators and 25 collaborators if you have 5 shows. So let's talk about the bandwidth. You get 500 gigabytes per podcast. Now, that means if you have 3 shows, like on a double stack, you'll have a total of 1.5 terabytes of bandwidth, although it's not pooled together, right? It's divided up per show. If you go over those limits, there is a overage fee. You pay 20 cents per gigabyte of bandwidth beyond the 500 that you get. Now, they say here that it includes about 25,000 downloads. You might think, wow, that's a ton of downloads. I'd love to have 25,000 listeners to my podcast, and so would I. But let me just give you a little bit of food for thought here because I used to do podcasts. I don't any longer. But I will say that those numbers aren't exactly right because obviously the file size of your audio file is going to change depending on how long your episode is. So if you're doing 90-minute or 2.5-hour interviews with people, your file size is going to get a lot bigger and you'll have, more bandwidth costs because of that. Additionally, if you upload your podcast in stereo, because maybe you have you're reviewing music or you have a nice theme song you would like to play back in stereo so that your podcast doesn't sound like it's playing off an AM radio, well, that's going to essentially double the size of your file or close to it, depending on how you encode things. So keep in mind that those numbers could be drastically reduced depending on the quality of your audio as well as the file size. Now, hosting a podcast is really not that complex. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, podcasting came out in 2004. Adam Curry is known as the Podfather, even though if you see at the top of the page here, they actually I clicked on the Sumo link. They actually Sumo, go away. There we go. They actually call this the Podfather. That is a name for Adam Curry, kind of either invented for himself or people started calling him that because he was the inventor of podcasts. Now, essentially, podcasts are really easy. They're just an audio file combined with a RSS feed. The hard part back in the day was the RSS feed because there was no tools to automatically generate them for you. You had to hand code everything. So now that we have tools like this, or there are several WordPress plugins that'll do that for us too, podcasting becomes a lot more accessible and it shouldn't be intimidating to you. All right, enough said. Let's head over to podcast.co. All right, so the first thing that podcast.co wants me to do is either import my existing podcast or I can create a new podcast right here. I'll go ahead and hit create new podcast. I'm going to call this That LTD Life and I'll give it the category of how about tech news and how about marketing. We can give it several categories if we like. I think that's good for me. I'll enter in the language of English and let's go ahead and enter in a podcast description here. All right, so for my description here, I said a weekly discussion of the top software tools with lifetime offers hosted by Dave Swift. We'll go ahead and hit next here. Now I need to give this a URL and I was actually playing around with the platform before and already used this particular URL. So I'll go ahead and change it a little bit here. And let's go ahead and hit next. Now, the next thing we need to do is upload a piece of artwork that we can use for our podcast. I'll go ahead and hit upload image. Now, this is going to be a 1200 by 1200 image. I noticed they don't tell you the dimensions, but typically that is the desired dimensions for a podcast image or album artwork. We can go ahead and zoom and center that up. I like that that flexibility they give you there. That's really nice. Go ahead and hit create podcast. And just like that, our feed has been created. Here is my show. If I wanted to add a second show, I could do that right here. Now, I can't because I only bought one code, but if I click into this, I'll be able to begin setting up my podcast. Now, the first thing you're probably going to want to do is upload an episode, which I'll hit right here and go ahead and grab my first episode that I just recorded. All right, so that's uploading. This is a real thing. I'm going to go ahead and start a podcast using this software. If you want to subscribe to it, I'll put a subscription link on the That LTD Life website. So head over there. I'll link it down in the description. If I get enough subscribers, I'll actually end up making a real weekly podcast, and we'll see how that goes. Just talk about all of my favorite, or we can have some guests on, talk about our favorite LTDs that are currently running. All right, so now that my episode is uploaded, I'll go ahead and give it a name. All right, so I went in and added a description. You can see I put the author as Client Amp LLC. The episode type is trailer. That's kind of nice. We can do either a full episode, a trailer episode, or a bonus episode, and then we can set the episode and season number as well. And if you are a provocative type, we don't do that around here, but if you have explicit content, you'd want to toggle that switch so it gets tagged with the appropriate marking over on the repositories, the Apple Store, the Spotify, those sorts of things. All right, we'll go ahead and hit next here, and it's going to ask us to publish the episode. Now I have three options. I can either publish it so that it's public, and that means it's going to go out to our RSS feed and people will be able to download it. We can also schedule it so that if you want to upload a bunch of episodes in one go, but have them release out, like say over the period of several months or so, you could schedule each one, or you could leave it as unlisted, which would upload the episode but not publish it to your RSS feed. Just think of the RSS feed as your notification feed. So when do people get notified? If you don't list it on the notification feed, they won't get notified. All right, so I'm gonna leave this as public right now. I'll go ahead and hit publish episode. All right, great. My episode is published, but I haven't actually sent my notification feed, my RSS feed, over to places where people are actively looking for podcasts. So to do that, I need to go over here where it says share and publish. Now I've got two options. I've got this RSS feed right here, and I could go around and I could find Apple and Spotify and whatever this one is, Google Podcasts, no offense, Googlers, and I could, one by one sign up and submit this podcast feed. Or I could click this button right here and they'll do it for me. Now, I still have this RSS feed, so if there's other platforms I want to submit it to, I can certainly do that in addition. So it's just really nice to have this process taken care of for us. Now, I will say that if I publish this episode immediately, you're probably not going to find my podcast over on any of these stores because typically it takes a few days to get approved. They actually do some kind of background check to make sure that you're putting out content that isn't copyrighted or isn't conflicting with any of their terms and conditions. So once that happens, then you will show that your podcast is approved and you're actually on those platforms. Well, we're over looking at the share settings. We can see that there is a podcast player, a podcast page, and a subscribe button. So this podcast player is going to be so that you can embed a player on your website and people can listen directly on your web page. This is what the player looks like. You have two themes. You can do a light theme or a dark theme. And then I imagine if you had several episodes, they would show up underneath. We have a few options. We can actually change the color here of the buttons if you want. That kind of orangish color wasn't really my taste. We can round off the player or we can make it square. That's really just changing those share buttons. And then we can also choose what features are displaying, whether we allow downloads, whether we allow sharing, and whether we allow subscriptions. So for most people, they're probably going to leave that on. This just embeds into your website with an iframe. So you just copy this and paste it in wherever using an HTML code. If you're on, let's say, just using the typical WordPress editor, you'd use the HTML block and then insert that in there. All right, so moving on to the next one. This is an actual web page they create for you. We can see what this looks like. I'll copy the link. So maybe you don't have a website and you're just on social media, you're on Twitter, Instagram. You could link to this and that will have all of your episodes where people can actually, listen right from the website. I know often I'll find a podcast, maybe listen to a little bit of an episode through a web browser and then say, oh, this is really good. I want to subscribe on my phone. And then I'll go look it up there. So it's nice to have this at least somewhere else on the internet. So it's not only on the the stores where people are listening. All right, so that is what the podcast page looks like. Of course, we can change the cover image, change the page title. We can link up to our social channels right here. There's 2 themes on this as well, and you can change that main color. So, very similar to what we saw on the player. We can add in our donation links if you want to ask people to help support you on Patreon or PayPal. All right, and then finally, the subscribe button. This is just a button you can put on your website. I'll put one on the homepage of That LTD.life. Head over there, hit the subscribe button, and you can get the That LTD Life podcast. That is what you do. There's 2 themes for this, light and dark. We can change the text color. We're seeing it on this background, but I believe you're just going to get the button. It's not going to show up on this gradient background. So have no fear there. Here's the embed code for that. So you just copy it, and just like you did with the player, you'd paste that into an HTML, anywhere where you can inject a little bit of code, and that should show up just fine. Heading over to the settings tab, this is basically what we did when we set up the podcast. However, there is some more options. If we go under advanced, this is going to give you some more granular control over what information is getting sent out through that RSS feed. So we can have things like a subtitle, a website URL, who the copyright is by. So, here it's just pulling in my name, but that's probably not what most people want. They want it copyrighted to their name. They probably want it to their company, what time zone you're in, author settings, and the content settings here, whether you're doing episodic or serial episodes, things like that. But, in general, whether it's going to be clean or explicit, it's kind of the overall setting. And then you still have the option to mark a singular, let's say you have an interview with someone and they have a filthy vocabulary, but usually your episodes are fairly clean. Then you could just mark that one episode as explicit. All right, then moving over to the analytics section here, we're kind of working backwards. This is where we're going to see how many people have listened to your show. Now, that might not sound very impressive, but getting metrics on podcasts is kind of difficult, and it's been difficult for quite some time. The problem is that a lot of people will download episodes, but they don't actually play them back, or they'll download episodes on multiple devices. If you have, say, a phone, a tablet, and a computer, they might all be downloading podcasts automatically, but you're only going to listen to one of them, if that, right? How many times do you download a podcast and you just never even get to it? So getting those metrics and having them be reliable is very difficult. The other information they're going to give us is the most popular episodes, the locations where people are downloading episodes from, and then top clients. That's going to be the platforms where whether people are downloading from the Apple Store or Spotify, that sort of thing, where you're popular, where your downloads are coming from. By far, most people are getting their podcasts through the Apple Podcast app. So that is going to be, for almost every single show, the most popular place that, even regardless of like Android users, just people on iPhones tend to consume more podcasts than the average person. And it's been that way for many years. So that's pretty much it for this platform. I'll admit, I came into this, I'm a diehard WordPress person, right? I don't generally like outsourcing this sort of stuff to a software as a service when I know that I could have better control over it if I was hosting my own WordPress website. But man, this was so fast and easy. I didn't pull my hair out at all. It just worked right away. I don't really have a lot of negative to say about it. They let me upload whatever bitrate file I want. I did upload a stereo file. I was, concerned sometimes they'll try to truncate that and make it mono, make it smaller. Other hosting platforms will do that sort of thing. So overall, this is looking like a really good deal. I'm pretty impressed. I like it a lot more than I thought I would. So I'm going to go ahead and give this one a 9.2. If you're thinking about starting a podcast, this is the place you probably want to start. I didn't think I'd be saying that in this review. So that's going to do it for this review. If you want to grab podcast.co for yourself, the link is down in the description. Helps us keep the lights on when you click our links, so we greatly appreciate that. Now, definitely keep an eye on That LTD Life for all of your Black Friday, Cyber Monday shopping needs. Once again, we'll link to that down below. And hey, we're talking about all the great deals over in the Facebook group, so head over there. That link is also in the description. That's all for this episode. I will see you in the next review.